Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Villains on the Rebirth server. We are with Nightmare Lass, our level 41 Mastermind, who has over 10 million XP earned, 1.7 million to go to get to level 42 in our next 3 enhancement slots. And we are on a story arc for Weston Phillips. I just got it. He's asked us to investigate this base of Freak Show and defeat them all and find out what they're up to, because apparently a group of Freak Show are being less violent than usual. And he's trying to find out why, because as you know, Weston Phillips wants to increase the hopelessness of the people in the district where he resides. And of course, they'll be more hopeful if the Freak Show stop being violent to them. So he wants us to go in here and see what's going on with the Freak Show. They're fighting the Arachnos, and he wants to know why. And are you kidding me? I forgot to set this to +1. Darn it. Alright, I'll do that after this episode. So yeah, we're on this story arc. We will do this, and when we finish this story arc, I will stop filming until level 42. I feel like one arc per level is probably enough to give you guys the flavor of the way this character is playing. It's not going to be changing significantly at this point. The epic power pools will give us a little something. They'll give us some additional defenses and stuff like that, but the fundamental way this character plays and the way the minions play isn't really going to change from episode to episode and story arc to story arc and level to level. So I feel like, you know, one arc per level is probably enough. It's a good thing these are white cons, because I was sloppy and over aggroed. And we got them all. So as you go, since this is white cons and will be fairly boring, let's have another conversation about game, sort of role-playing game theory and practice. This one comes, once again, from the D&D Beyond forums. But it doesn't have anything, it's not directly, I mean, the question originally that was asked was about D&D, but it's not just about D&D. This is about role-playing games in general. One of the players on the D&D Beyond forum wants to become a DM, and he posted to the DM forum asking us for help in becoming a better voice actor. He wants a voice coach to train him on how to do accents and voices, in his words, so he can be a good DM. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do the voices, and if you enjoy doing that and want to do it and learn how to do that as part of your skill set, it's perfectly fine. But doing the voices has nothing to do with being a good DM. And I've actually never played any role-playing game with any DM or GM that did the voices. I didn't do the voices in general. I did a little bit in Champions. So the main exception for this is Champions, because Champions is played in an analog of the real world, where you have you know, Germans and Russians and French and Australian and other Irish people, and you know, folks who do have, to an American, an accent. And some of those accents some of us can do. For instance, I was pretty decent at doing a Russian accent, because I had a Russian friend named Timur when I was in high school, and he was on the chess team with me. He thought he was better at chess than he really was, because he was Russian. And he thought that just by default, Russian equals good at chess, which is, of course, not true. It isn't in their genes. And he actually was one of the weaker players on our chess team. And then, by the way, that shows you how much of a nerd I was in high school, because I was playing both Dungeons & Dragons and Champions and chess. And I was actually on the chess team. I didn't just play chess. I represented my school in competition. And there is a boss, but let's take care of this guy that just read. Man, every single one of these guys rezzed. So there's a boss called Teach's Pet. Teacher's Pet. I don't know if we need all of our bosses. We'll take a couple of them. And then we'll go attack Teacher's Pet, or we'll attack his buddy first. And let me come in here and take out the defenses. And then we're going to gang up on Teacher's Pet. And there's a desk. where I guess whatever teacher's pet was learning is stored. So anyway, back to the voices. Yeah, so I used to do Russian accent when I was doing the Russian supervillains. But in D&D, we didn't do different accents for elves and dwarves and halflings and stuff. We just talked in our normal voices. When I played female characters, I didn't try to make my voice sound feminine. And I didn't make it like deeper for the dragons or anything like that. We just didn't do that. Did he res? He did. Let's just defeat him again. Good XP. Now again, there's nothing wrong with doing the voices. I don't mind people who do the voices. I think voices are cool. I wish I could do them too. But being able to do the voices doesn't make you a good DM, and not being able to do the voices doesn't make you a bad one. GMing a game is not about doing the voices. It's not even about role-playing the NPCs, although that is part of what you have to do. Game mastering is about understanding the rules, understanding the characters, knowing the backgrounds of your player characters, knowing what your players want, and being able to give your players what they want so that they can enjoy the game, but not giving them so much of what they want that the game becomes boring, right? Well, for instance, all players want their character to become more powerful, and often there is a struggle, a tug of war between the game master and the players, with the players constantly trying to make their character be more powerful than it should be, and the game master always reining them in and saying, no, you can't do this, and no, you can't do that. And the players I think a lot of times the players think they want the GM to just give in to them and let them have all the power they want. But if they did, the game would be boring because it would be too easy. Because they'd be too powerful and they'd be on God mode all the time. Just like we don't really want this to be on +0 because it's too darn easy, and I'm going to change it as soon as I talk to our contact. So I guess my point, folks, is if you want a game master, don't worry about doing the voices. The voices have nothing to do with a role-playing game. Role-playing is not about doing the voices. Role-playing is just about playing a character, right? And enjoying the game as it's designed, enjoying the rules of the game, and so forth. Alright, so he says, it's done, excellent, I can't wait to... Someone's coming, let me get into character. You monster, you fiend! How dare you come here and gloat in my face? I'll not cower down before your bullying. Many people were relying on the supplies those brave freak show liberated. Why must villains like you stomp on everything good that might happen to... Are they gone? Good. Sorry about that. Gotta keep up appearances, you know. Well, with the information you found, it sounds like Miss Francine is the real problem here. I'll ask around. Alright, now, do we have his phone number? We don't have his phone number yet. Alright, I'm going to pause it here, guys. I will bring you back when we're back with this guy. I don't want to take a mission from him until I up the mission difficulty, so I will be right back. Alright, we are back, and he says, Haven House opens its doors, even to you, Nightmare Lass. Now that I know what to look for, it was easy to find out what's been going on. It seems that a young woman has made it her personal mission to rehabilitate some of the unsavory elements around here. There are a number of freak show who've grown quite attached to this plucky young school teacher, and I fear that she's rubbing off on them. Miss Francine is becoming a shining beacon of hope, so I'm afraid that little light must be snuffed out. That means we get to kill her. I guess. I'm glad you agree. I've had some difficulty pinning down Miss Francine. Her freak show friends like to move her around to keep people like you and me from finding her. But she's made a bit of an incautious error. It seems that she's trying to set up a little school, of all things. I told people that I'd like to help her, but I discovered that she's already getting help from an outside source. It seems that school supplies are being funneled to her, and then left in a forgotten warehouse. With the class schedule you found and my connections, I think I found out where and when the next pickup is. I'm told that she eventually plans to turn the place into a schoolroom. Can you imagine it? Miss Francine's school for freaks? The very image of freak shows sitting in rows of desks is hilarious. It would almost be worth letting her continue her work just to see that, but no. Your job is to capture her and find out where those supplies are coming from. No doubt the freaks she's teaching will try to protect her, but I assure you that Drek and the other freak show aren't taking classes with that little troublemaker. I want her out of the picture. as much as they want her out of the picture as much as I do. All right, so we're going to head to Miss Francine. So, one of the things that's interesting, you think about role-playing, a lot of people think role-playing means talking in the voice of your character in essentially first person, speaking the dialogue word for word. Why, you villainous knave, I say to the bad guy, you will suffer as I fire my energy blast at you, or whatever your character happens to be. Or I walk up to the innkeeper. And say, buddy, do you have 3 rooms for me and my friends? Okay, so we're invisible here, so this purple guy, like, why do they send you into a level 45 zone when you're a level 41? You'd think they wouldn't do that, but we're fine, we're invisible. So that's what people often think of when they think of role-playing. And I think, unfortunately, the online TV shows about role-playing games foster this idea as one person... Oh, almost clicked the wrong thing. As one person on the Ironsworn Discord mentioned last night when I brought this up, he said there's this trend of role-playing game as performance rather than role-playing game as game. Now, there isn't anything particularly wrong with a role-playing game being played as a performance, but most people don't play the role-playing game as a performance. Right? Very similar to how there isn't anything wrong with me recording and narrating what I'm doing, or even talking about D&D while I'm playing City of Heroes. Objectively, there's nothing wrong with doing it, but it's probably not the case that most people do that while they're playing City of Heroes. They're probably being silent, they're thinking about the mission, and maybe they're chatting in group chat with their teammates, right? And so there's a difference between playing a game just to play it and playing a game as a performance. And I think that, again, although it's fine that these games can be played as a performance, and I see nothing wrong with them, and I've watched some of the shows that are done role-playing game as a performance and had quite a lot of fun watching them. Nothing wrong with it. It does, if it's all you've seen, if it's what you know, because you haven't played D&D other ways before, when it wasn't a performance, you come to think that that's the way it's supposed to be played. It's the only way to play it. And that's really not true. You don't have to perform your Dungeons & Dragons. You can just play it. And you similarly don't have to have this literal, direct quote, word-for-word dialogue that your character speaks when you're role-playing. So I can't remember the name of the guy who did it, but there's somebody on the internet. I don't want to take credit for it because he's the one who came up with this sort of classification of how to do things, but he said that basically 4 styles of role-playing, all of them, and this is the most important part, equally valid. No way is more right than the other ways. You can either, when you're speaking and describing the actions of your characters, speak in first or third person. You can say, I do this, I do that. Or you can say, Nightmare Lass does this, Nightmare Lass does that. I often speak in first person when I'm narrating and say, we are going to have to fight this bad guy, or they've stunned us, right? I don't tend to say they've stunned Nightmare Lass. On the other hand, when I'm role-playing, I often speak in third person, and I've talked about this in previous episodes. I think one of the reasons I was trained to do this is because when I started playing Dungeons & Dragons, we were playing multiple characters at once, so I couldn't say I, right? The DM would have said, which character are you talking about? Instead, I had to say, Aaron does this, or Celine does that. And so I just became used to that. So you can speak in first or third person. He also points out that you can speak either directly or indirectly. I would call this in quotations or summary, right? So you can say, Hail, innkeeper, do you have a mug of ale for me? That's the quotation your character just made. Or you can say, does the innkeeper have some ale? Right? I ask if the innkeeper has some ale. That's summarizing what you said. Both of them are entirely valid ways of role-playing. So he said you can combine these in 4 different ways. There is first person direct. I walk up to the innkeeper and say, "Hey, buddy, can you spare a mead for me and my 3 friends? And do you have a room? And how much does it cost?" Right, so that's the quotation that your character actually said those words. That's first person direct. You can also do first person indirect. I walk up to the innkeeper and I ask him if he has a room and a mug of ale, and how much the room costs. You're not saying the actual words of your character, but you have summarized for the DM the gist of the conversation. The DM could say, the innkeeper says that there is a room, and that he can give it to you for 3 gold pieces. Right? So, first person direct. I walk up to the innkeeper and say, "Do you have a mug of ale?" First person indirect. I walk up to the innkeeper and ask if he has a mug of ale. Then there's third person direct. Nightmare Lass walks up to Lord Recluse and says, "Who do you think you are, Lord Recluse? How dare you ambush me?" That's third person direct. I'm using the actual words that Nightmare Lass speaks. And then there's third person indirect. Nightmare Lass walks up to Lord Recluse and asks him how he could dare ambush her. Right? So you have 4 different ways. I walk up to Lord Recluse and say, "How dare you ambush me?" I walk up to Lord Recluse and ask him how he could dare ambush me. Nightmare Lass walks up to Lord Recluse and says, "How dare you ambush me?" Nightmare Lass walks up to Lord Recluse and asks him how dare he could ambush her. Right? That's first and third person, direct and indirect. All of those are valid ways to roleplay. And 2 of them couldn't possibly use accents, because you're not speaking in the words of your character. You're just saying, you can just say, Nightmare Lass walks up to Lord Recluse and asks, in an Irish accent, how dare he could ambush her. And that's role-playing, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And, I mean, if your fellow role-players are any good, they should have the imagination to be able to imagine the words and the accent. It shouldn't be necessary for you to actually quote yourself. So, I mean, I guess this is just, I guess my point that I'm trying to make is you shouldn't feel, just because the people doing these performances online are professional actors who can do the first-person direct accent, that you have to do that to roleplay correctly. And that maybe if you don't feel comfortable doing the first-person direct accented version, that somehow you're doing it wrong. There isn't any way to Dungeons and Dragons wrong. If you and your friends are enjoying yourselves and having fun, you're doing it right. And there certainly isn't anything requiring anybody to speak in first person, to speak direct, quoting, and there's nothing requiring you to use an accent. So my main concern with this is that there are people who feel like, almost like they're not good enough to play D&D, and worse, not good enough to DM, because they don't do direct quoting and they don't use accents. And they feel like somehow the role play isn't as good. I know that there are people who have complained on Matt Colville's show, The Chain of Acheron, because his players tend to do a lot of third-person or first-person indirect. So, for example, they'll say, I'm going to go up to the captain and ask her where we're bound, or where are we headed. And they may not use their exact words. They just summarize what they're saying. And Matt Colville will say, oh, she tells you that you're on your way to the astral sea. And then the other player will say, all right, I'm going to ask, what exactly is the astral sea? And Colville will say, well, she explains to you that it's actually in another dimension, and it's like the sea between the stars, and you can get from one plane to another by traveling through it. Right? And they haven't done any direct quote dialogue, but they're still role-playing. They're, the player is having their character ask questions their character would ask, and The DM is having the NPC respond the way the NPC would respond. They're just paraphrasing or summarizing it rather than doing an exact direct quote. Well, if you think about novels, right, and the way books are written, lots of times the author will summarize what happened. I read Lord of the Rings, and there are whole weeks that go by, days that go by, in a paragraph, because the hobbits are captured and the orcs are taking them, and it's pretty monotonous, and he'll just say, you know, that the orcs traveled for 3 days and 3 nights without resting, and Merry and Pippin grew tired and couldn't speak to each other because of how the orcs kept them separated. And that's it. And he just summarized 3 days of time, and that doesn't make the narrative inferior. That's just a perfectly valid way to tell a story, as just as correct as if you are doing every line of dialogue that every orc speaks and that Merry and Pippin speak throughout the entire 3 days. You can do it however you want. And there isn't an objectively right or wrong way to write, and there isn't an objectively right or wrong way to roleplay. And so I ask people to remember that if you're a beginner, and especially if you're a beginner who's taken a lot of inspiration. Do we have an asterisk here? Oh, we know where we're going. Okay. Spoilers. If you're a player who's taken a lot of inspiration from the many very good TV shows on YouTube where they play D&D or other role-playing games online, Savage World, whatever, and these can be a lot of fun to watch and can be absolutely great to participate in, be part of the audience, but don't become intimidated by what you see there and think, well, because I can't do what they're doing, it means I can't play D&D. I can't play Champions or Rollmaster. Sure you can. All of us can. Same thing with this game. All right, I'm playing on +1. One of the commenters, and I can't remember who it was, a long time ago, I think back before Kievar started watching, and I was on +1 or +2 with Silver Phoenix. One of the commenters was like, "Wow, I can, barely do +0s." They couldn't believe I was doing. Not only was I doing +2s, but I'm doing it with SOs, right? Rather than, having all the sets and everything. And like, how the heck can I do such a hardcore way of playing? And almost implied, like, that they're somehow doing COH wrong because they're doing it on +0. No, you're not doing it wrong. You don't have to put it on +1. I prefer the challenge of the +1, but there's nothing wrong with playing it on +0. Or even one of my supergroup mates said she was a controller and she wasn't doing a lot of damage. She said, I have it on -1. There's no shame in that. It's not the wrong way to play City of Heroes. The developers put it in the game for you to do. So if you're doing what the game allows you to do, you're doing it right. And there isn't any one right way to do it. Just like there isn't any one right way to enhance these powers. There's the way you want to play and the way you want to enhance it. And if it's a way that makes you enjoy the game more, then that's the right way to enhance your powers. There isn't a one right way to do this. There isn't one right set of powers to select. There isn't a right primary or a right secondary to go together. Super Reflexes isn't the wrong set to choose with martial arts. It's whatever you want. So don't let people on the internet who play the game one way make you feel like you can't do it because you don't want to play it that way. Just like you don't have to narrate your games the way I'm doing when you play City of Heroes. Just play it quietly. Play it for fun. You don't have to post to YouTube. I do it. It's fun for me. But that doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Alright, enough ranting. Let us finish this mission by buffing our minions and taking down this boss. How much you want to bet Francine's going to end up being like a freak show boss? Rogzor. Alright, let's teleport the minion out here, and maybe he'll come with us. Oh no, Francine's in there with them. We'll protect you, Miss Francine, he says. Yeah, I don't think so. And you're coming right to me, and you're going to get a debuff. There we go. And I need to put an accuracy enhancer on that. Do I actually have an accuracy recipe? No, it's 45. That's right, we checked that last time. Alright, we're going to let this guy res first before we rescue her. Because then it will probably trigger an ambush. Okay, he's not resing, so now we will kidnap Francine. Come with me, Francie girl. And here we go. Now my guess is we will be ambushed at least once by the freaks who are going to be trying to save Miss Francine. Is she with me? Let me click on her so that I have her targeted. Yeah, I do think that it saddens me to hear stories of players who seem to feel like if they can't, quote-unquote, live up to what they see on a stream, that somehow they almost have no right to play the game, that they have no business playing the game. And you shouldn't feel that way. Right? You don't need to live up to what you see on some internet TV show. There's nothing to live up to. There's just the way you want to play, the way you have fun. And that's really all that matters. If you're having fun, that's it. That's why the game's here. It's here for you to have fun. Right? That's why City of Heroes exists. That's why Dungeons and Dragons exists. That's why Champions exists. They are designed for people to play them and have fun. Now, yes, they were designed for the companies to make money off the people playing them and have fun. Of course. But the goal of any role-playing game is to have fun playing a role. And if you do that, whichever way you do it, whether you're voice acting or not, whether you're playing in first or third person, direct or indirect, whether you're mostly just grinding through dungeon crawls or doing a highly social role-play kind of game, however you want to play it, if you're having fun, that's the right way to play. And you should never let anybody tell you otherwise. Alright, Francine, let's go. She didn't get lost. A little unusual. Most NPCs get stuck at least once, but she seems like she... I guess because she's a teacher, she's smarter than the rest. I don't know. Alright, folks. We are done with this mission. I'm going to go back invisible because we're in a level 45 area. We'll exit out. And we will go see our contact. And I think we will stop this episode at that point. We've made quite a bit of progress on this story arc. And we should get a phone number from this guy at this point. And that will make all of our mission running faster because I wanted to keep going back and forth to him. You just call them up. I've got to do something about this salvage. Maybe I'll craft some of these enhancements and then stick them in my enhancement table. I'll do that off screen. There's no reason for you guys to watch me do that. It's not super interesting. Alright, and he says, "Oh, there will be so much sweet anguish when word gets out that little Miss Francine Prim was captured. Serves her right for giving some hope to this trash." So she was getting her help from the longbow, was she? Well, Arachnos will lock her away and pry every single shred of what she learned about us from her pretty little head. Whatever's left of her will be dumped on the street. I'll have to make sure that she makes her way here to Haven House. I'll put her broken little form to work on staff to show my charity. And when people see what became of her, it will send them even further to despair. That, Nightmare Lass, is what I call job satisfaction. You're a real master, aren't you? I like that. A monster, aren't you? I like that. Monsters I can deal with. But you're becoming known around here. Take this number, and you can reach me more discreetly. This way. So, we have his phone number now, and we're on his story arc. And we will continue the story arc Miss Francine and the Freak Show teacher in the next episode. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Villains on the Rebirth server.